A reading from the Gospel of St. Luke, the 9th chapter. Now about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with them. Just as they were leaving, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my Son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then a man from the crowd shouted, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child." Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." While he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsions. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God. This is the good news in Jesus Christ, which is the word of the Lord.
Praise to you.
Please be seated, and Kenna, I invite you to the pulpit.
I'm very excited this year to have the opportunity during this time to tell you so much more about how world hunger is going to be eradicated in the years to come, thanks to the ELCA World Hunger Programs. Thank you, Pastor Phil, for inviting me to share today. So I've been the World Hunger Contact for King of Kings for many years, and a little over a year ago, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America started a new program. It was the World Hunger Ambassador Program. Our own Barbara Ripperger is on the Rocky Mountain Synod Core Hunger Team, and as coordinator of the Ambassador Program, she asked me to be ambassador for the Southeast Conference for the Rocky Mountain Synod. A team came from Chicago to Denver, and they trained a number of us. We were the pilot group for all of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America worldwide. They've had another training session since then. The ambassadors are tasked with telling the story of ELCA World Hunger in our congregations and to be available to other congregations in our conferences to help them with their World Hunger programs. Our congregation has always worked hard raising money to fight hunger in our world, especially with our focus during Lent on world hunger. In fact, of the 10,000 ELCA churches worldwide, our congregation is one of the top 100 fundraisers for world hunger. And it's your generosity that is known throughout the ELCA and very much appreciated. Thank you for that. 2 years ago, our Suds ministry team volunteered to provide a pancake kickoff breakfast that alone raised $900 for World Hunger. And last year, they added a silent auction to it, which nearly doubled that amount. That's just the start of our focus. So that is pretty amazing, and we hope that you'll all join them for breakfast this morning. It's smelling pretty good in here. Mahatma Gandhi famously said, "There are people in the world so hungry that God cannot appear to them except in the form of bread." ELCA World Hunger Programs do provide food immediately, and today you'll learn about many other ways that they provide services to rid the world of hunger forever. In our gospel today, we heard how Jesus invited Peter and John and James to come up on the mountain with him. They saw the change in Jesus, the transfiguration, and they saw his glory. And Peter wanted to build 3 dwellings on the mountain, one for Jesus, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, thinking that they could stay there in glory forever. But Jesus said no. He said there was still much work to be done for him down in the valleys, down where real life is happening, down where there was sickness and poverty and hunger. Jesus said they had to come down from the mountain and do the work that still needed to be done. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 35 through 36, Jesus says, "I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I needed clothes and you clothed me." And verse 40 goes on to say, "Whenever you did this for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it for me." It is our job to go down into the valleys and do the work that still needs to be done. And again, our church does an amazing job of that. Jesus isn't asking us to consider caring for our brothers and sisters in need around the world. He expects us to do that. But ending hunger isn't just about food. It's about connecting people to resources and helping them gain access to clean water, health care, education, and sources of income. ELCA World Hunger has a domestic hunger grant program that supports ministries that offer hope and assistance to thousands in the United States. Last year, this program gave over $700,000 to support 347 domestic projects and programs ranging from food pantries to job training. And there was much more. 11 of those grants were right here in Colorado, and 2 organizations here in Pueblo received grants 2 years ago. The really good news, 91% of the money given for ELCA World Hunger goes directly to that cause, with only 9% being used for administration and fundraising. Many of you have heard of the disaster relief program through ELCA World Hunger. And giving to this program helps ELCA respond immediately to bring hope to people whose lives have been disrupted by hurricanes and tornadoes across the country, and by the flooding in Texas and Louisiana and so many other places last year. After the media leaves, Lutherans stay, working mostly behind the scenes to provide aid and to rebuild homes. 100% of the money you give for disaster relief goes directly to relief efforts because it is administered through the ELCA World Hunger Program. That's a whole lot of administration for a whole little bit of money. Bad water claims more lives around the world each year than war. And during those weather disasters last year, the water supplies in many of our communities in the United States were contaminated. ELCA World Hunger provided water filters to families that are capable of purifying water without electricity or chemicals and cost just $30 for each filter. In many countries, some families have to walk more than 2 hours each way to find water that's safe for drinking. The lack of access to clean water is one of the biggest challenges to overcoming poverty. It's also one of the most powerful opportunities to create change. With a simple well, as many as 500 families gain access to clean, safe water. Communities are healthier, and instead of spending hours each day finding safe water for their families, men and women are able to go to work, and children are able to go to school. So what does our call to service look like? It looks like a bowl of rice to a family who hasn't eaten today, or maybe even yesterday. It's immediate relief. And it looks like clean water brought to villages through wells or water filters. It looks like a chicken or a cow or a pig that will be the beginning of a new life for a family. And it looks like education and training as tools for a family to learn how to raise vegetables and take care of their animals and to raise more of them. Did you know that the ELCA has a program where they send people for 2 to 3 years into a community to teach them how to be self-sustaining? This long commitment by volunteers is called accompaniment, because we don't go into a community and say, this is what you need. We believe people know their own communities best. We go in and ask what their resources are, what their best assets are as a people, and we build on that. We take soil samples to determine the best crops to grow with the biggest yields, and then teach them how to produce those crops. We teach them how to use their resources to provide for themselves financially and teach them trades. We help them start businesses with microloans that they then pay back so we can help others. We give them a hand up, not a handout. When ELCA World Hunger leaves that community, it's self-sustaining for many years to come. We have shown them God's enduring and merciful love. I've been a member of King of Kings for over 26 years, and 15 years ago I became director of lay ministry, and I was instructed to move forward in any direction I wanted to go, choosing projects that were important to me. I learned more about the work of our social ministry team and how it works in our community. The quilts that they make for women's shelters and migrant workers, for child advocacy and rape crisis centers, the baby layettes made for struggling families, and the meals cooked for homeless teens and families. Our congregation has always collected food for Cooperative Care, Posada, and Los Pobres. We collect clothing and household goods for migrant workers, and these donations come from you, our congregation. I was hooked and knew that this outreach was going to be big on my heart for a long time to come. Because of our social ministry leaders through the years, Ray and Dory Miller, Claudia Stubenrausch, Barbara Ripperger, and now Barbara Anders, I keep learning just how great the need is. We have so many homeless men and women, youth and families in our community who struggle daily, and I've learned that the work of ELCA World Hunger Programs reaches right into our community. Most of us have never experienced the kind of hunger that most people in our world, even here in Pueblo County, face every day of their lives. It's hard for us in our comfortable lives to imagine how we'll feed our families today and tomorrow and next week. Today in our world, 1 person in 9 lives in extreme poverty. Just a few years ago, I was reporting to you that it was 1 in 5, and then 1 in 7, and then 1 in 8. So we are really gaining on this fight. Through your generosity, we are providing food and clothing for many. And in the U.S., almost 47 million Americans live in poverty and face hunger or the threat of hunger every day. ELCA World Hunger helps families in Pueblo across the U.S. and in over 60 countries around the world. Last year, as Southeast Conference and Ambassador, I was invited to speak at a couple of churches in our conference. In your bulletin today, you'll find a copy of The Daily Bread. It's the story about how a farmer from one of those congregations heard what a big difference an animal can make to a family. So he challenged his fellow congregation members, who were mostly farmers, to help with that cause, to build a barnyard. And then he went out into into the community, and he challenged his neighbors and others in the community to help with world hunger. It's a pretty impressive story, and I hope you'll take the time to read it. There are so many ways our congregation raises funds for ELCA World Hunger, and in the weeks to come, you're going to learn during the children's messages about many opportunities we have to raise funds for world hunger. Next week, after the service, we'll be giving to each family who wants one, a piggy coin bank or a barnyard coin bank. God offers opportunities every day for us to live with purpose and meaning. Eradicating hunger takes each one of us doing what we can. So what can just one person do? Well, that's how things get changed in God's world. One person at a time, one piece of spare change at a time. Only by working together can we bring to life the vision of a world without hunger. Together, we achieve so much more than one individual, one congregation, or one synod can do alone. We can make a huge difference in the lives of those caught up in poverty, those dying of hunger every day. We are the ELCA, better together. God is calling us into the world together. Thank you for helping us respond to that call. Amen.